You know that moment when you're sitting in a room full of wrapping paper, smiling faces, torn ribbons, and you suddenly realize, none of it's for you? Yeah. That was me last Christmas. My name's Elliot, and I come from a family where appearances matter more than oxygen. My mom decorates the house like she's auditioning for some mid-tier HGTV special. Matching stockings, curated tree themes. Rustic Nordic birch. One year. Rose gold winter. The next, and 12 different appetizers that no one eats because she insists on calling dinner. Plated. Not served. Plated. But beneath all the twinkly lights and forced laughter, our family has cracks wide enough to swallow small animals. Mainly, the Grand Canyon-sized gap between how they treat my younger brother, Mason, and how they treat me. Mason is the golden one. He's a real estate agent/Instagram life coach. Posts things like, "Don't chase money, attract a glowing star," while borrowing $600 from Dad every month and calling it a family investment. Me? I work in HVAC. Not glamorous, but I'm licensed, good at it, and fun fact, I've actually paid back every dollar I ever borrowed. Not that anyone in my family noticed. Anyway, back to Christmas. We were all at my parents' place in Charlotte. Picture it, fake snow on the porch, 3-ring binder of approved conversation topics at dinner. No politics. No religion. No mention of Aunt Lydia's third divorce. And a mountain of presents under the tree that could have passed for a sponsored giveaway. Mason was holding court, as usual, talking about his crypto hustle, and dropping phrases like liquidity pool, without actually knowing what they meant. Everyone laughed. Even Grandpa, who still thinks Bitcoin is a new kind of deodorant. I sat in the corner, sipping burnt eggnog, not expecting much. And yet, somehow, even that was too generous. One by one, the presents were handed out. From Mom and Dad, to Mason. To Mason, from Ed Sheeran. Oh wow, Mason again! With a handwritten note this time. Even my cousin Tricia, who showed up late and left early, got a sweater and a "so thoughtful" shout-out. I got nothing. Not one gift. Not a card. Not a candy cane with my name taped to it. Nada. I was still holding on to this faint hope that maybe they were saving mine for last, some family tradition I'd forgotten. You know, build up the suspense and all. But then Dad stood up, dusted his hands off, and muttered loud enough for the whole room to hear. Well, I think that's everything. Elliot's too old for presents anyway. Too old. Like I'd aged out of being considered part of the family. Like there was a secret cut-off point for affection. Everyone kind of froze, like they didn't know whether to laugh or cringe. Mason let out a snort laugh, covered it with a cough, then went back to checking his phone. I didn't say anything. Didn't storm out. Didn't throw the mug at the reindeer centerpiece, tempting though. I just stood up, put my coat on and said, "Thanks for the holiday." Then I walked out. The cold hit my face like clarity. There's something about being outside at night on Christmas Eve, hearing distant laughter and seeing warm windows while you sit in your car, engine humming, staring at the steering wheel like it might give you answers. I remember sitting there thinking, maybe I really am too old. Too old to keep hoping they'll treat me the same. Too old to keep chasing their approval like it's some elusive raffle prize. Too old to ignore the pattern. That night, I drove straight home to my small apartment above the mechanic shop I rent space from. I heated up leftover mac and cheese, sat on the floor with my dog Watson, and promised myself one thing. Next Christmas, I won't be sitting in that room. And they'll know exactly why. Growing up I was the basement kid. Not in a horror movie way. In a, your room is down there because Mason needs the natural light for his emotional development way. See, our childhood home had 2 bedrooms upstairs. Mom turned one into a pastel palace for Mason. Matching curtains, jungle gym, a freaking essential oil diffuser shaped like a unicorn. Mine? I got the unfinished basement. Concrete floors. A twin mattress. And a warning not to touch the breaker panel because it's sensitive. Whenever guests came over, Mom would give the grand tour upstairs, cooing about Mason's reading nook and the feng shui of his Creativity corner. Me? She'd say. Oh, Elliot's got his little bachelor pad downstairs. He likes it. No. I didn't. I like not freezing during the winter. I like not waking up to spiders doing the cha-cha across my pillow. But apparently those preferences didn't factor into the family vision board. It wasn't just a bedroom thing. Birthdays? Mason got trampoline parks, pony rides, and custom cakes with edible gold flakes. One year, I got a 6-pack of socks and a reminder to be grateful for the basics. School awards? When Mason got a most improved attendance certificate in 6th grade, Mom printed it on a mug. I once placed 3rd in the state for a science fair project and was told, "That's great, honey. Can you take out the trash now?" I learned early on that my wins didn't count unless Mason had something smaller to compare them to. If he failed a test and I passed, I was making him feel bad. If he broke a dish and I offered to clean it up, I was showing off. So I stopped trying. By high school, I didn't bother inviting them to anything. No point. They always had a previous engagement, which, 9 out of 10 times, was a brunch with Mason's soccer team or some family friend who could get him exposure. When I told them I was going into HVAC after graduation, Dad literally laughed. Like out loud. "You're going to fix air conditioners?" "No," I said. "I'm going to own a business." He just shook his head and walked away. Mom tried to be supportive, in the same way a cat tries to help you do yoga. Distracting and slightly condescending. "That's great, honey," she said. "Everyone needs a plan B. Except this wasn't plan B. It was plan A. And I was good at it. By the time I turned 23, I had my certifications, a solid client base, and my own rusty but reliable service van named Bessie. Meanwhile, Mason was burning through his 3rd startup idea, pitching eco-conscious energy drinks to retired dentists at country club brunches. Still, at family events, I was the afterthought. The one who gets dirty for a living. While Mason got to explain how he was building something big, I never argued. I just watched. Waited. Got better. Made quiet moves. And I kept receipts, literal and emotional. So when I left their house last Christmas, giftless and dismissed like an unwanted draft pick, it wasn't a sudden realization. It was the final straw on a pile of years. Years where I smiled through invisibility. Laughed off backhanded compliments. Took photos where I stood slightly to the side, just in case they needed to crop me out later. But that night something shifted. I stopped waiting for recognition. And started planning for revenge. Not loud, not messy. Just poetic. And as fate would have it, an opportunity arrived in the form of a man named Bob Harris and a busted furnace on New Year's Eve. I didn't know it yet, but Bob was going to be the match that lit the whole thing. I met Bob Harris on one of those nights where your breath fogs up the inside of your van windows, and your fingers forget what warmth feels like. It was New Year's Eve, around 9:30 p.m. Most people were out wearing glitter and pretending champagne didn't taste like carbonated regret. I was hauling Bessie through black ice to answer an emergency call from a guy whose heating had died, in a 100-year-old house on the edge of town. Normally, I wouldn't have taken a job that late on a holiday. But I wasn't exactly drowning in party invites. Plus, my space heater had just died, so I needed the cash. When I pulled up, I half expected the guy to be one of those clients who breathes down your neck while you're working, offering you cookies and passive-aggressive advice like, "Have you tried turning it off and on?" But Bob? He opened the door in slippers, wrapped in a scarf the size of a beach towel, and said, "If you fix this furnace, I will name my firstborn after you." He's 42, but still. A deal's a deal. I laughed. "I'll see what I can do." The house was old money. Not fancy, but solid. Tall ceilings, creaky hardwood floors, wallpaper older than the internet. It had character. And also, apparently, a furnace that was 80% rust and 20% hope. While I worked, Bob hovered nearby, sipping from a steaming mug that smelled suspiciously like whiskey in disguise. "You do this full-time?" he asked. "Yeah," I replied. HVAC tech. I've got my own business. Small crew. We stay busy. You're the boss? I nodded. Not big time or anything. But it pays the bills. Bought me Bessie. Who's Bessie? My van. I said. She's ugly, but she's got spirit. Bob laughed. Ugly but dependable. Sounds like my third marriage. I finished the repair about an hour later. Got the heat back on, made sure nothing was going to explode, and was packing up my gear when Bob said, "You any good with zoning regulations?" I know a guy who is. Why? He gestured vaguely to a stack of paperwork on a nearby table. Inherited this place from my uncle. Turns out the zoning changed. Can't keep it as a residence. Can't sell it without tearing down half the porch. Been a headache. What are you going to do with it? Dunno. Thought about turning it into a small office space or something. Maybe rent it out. I hesitated. My brain was doing math while my heart was doing jazz hands. Would you ever consider selling? Bob squinted at me. You want to buy it? Maybe, I said, trying to sound casual. Could be a good fit for expanding the business. Office downstairs. Living space up top. He studied me for a long moment. You'd fix it up? Every inch. He nodded. Tell you what. Give me a fair offer, not some HGTV fantasy number, and I'll think about it. I'd rather sell it to someone who actually uses it than some suit who wants to flip it into a vape lounge. I smiled. We exchanged numbers. 2 weeks later, the papers were signed. It wasn't flashy. The house needed work. The porch was crooked. The roof moaned when it rained. But it was mine. My name on the deed. My vision in the bones. And the best part? It shared a property line with something very, very familiar. A charming beige colonial with a red front door, a pride flag that none of them believed in, but put up for optics, and a mortgage that had been refinanced 4 times. My parents' house. Yup. Bob's house, now my house, was their next-door neighbor. Fate didn't just hand me lemons. It gifted me an entire lemonade stand with a view of the people who never believed I'd be more than a basement inconvenience. And I had plans. Not loud ones. Not petty ones. Just poetic ones. With a bit of strategic patience. I moved into the house 2 weeks after closing. I didn't announce it. Didn't post about it. Didn't even park Bessie out front. I used the back alley, hauled things in after dark, and for the first week, lived like a ghost with a toolbox, fixing, cleaning, listening. The walls whispered history. Loose boards creaked like they were sighing in relief that someone finally cared. I scrubbed until the floors gleamed, patched up drywall, replaced light fixtures, and rewired half the place because the electrical was a lawsuit waiting to happen. But the view? Oh man. Every morning, I sipped gas station coffee on my sagging front steps and watched Dad in his robe walk out to get the paper like it was still 1995. Mason occasionally pulled up in a leased Tesla, music blaring, sunglasses on before sunrise. Mom came and went with bags from stores she couldn't afford. They had no idea I was watching. And I wasn't even being creepy. I was being informed. See, about a week into the renovations, I got a visit from a city inspector. Apparently, the zoning issue Bob mentioned had finally caught up with the property records office, and they flagged my address for usage confirmation. Long story short, nothing I didn't expect. I had a permit in process. I knew the codes. But while we stood out front, the inspector, a guy named Charlie with a mustache too big for his face, glanced at the neighboring house and said, "You know, that place almost got flagged last year for failure to comply." I blinked. My parents' place? He didn't know they were my parents, obviously. He just nodded. Yeah. There's an easement issue. Part of their driveway cuts into your property line. It's grandfathered in, technically, but it's part of their loan clause. If ownership of either parcel changes, the clause reactivates. That made me pause. Reactivates how? He scratched his head. Means they either renegotiate access legally, or pay a penalty to the bank for violating the setback rules. Honestly, Nobody enforces it unless someone complains. Or if something changes. I didn't say anything, but my brain filed that under future tools for vengeance. So I looked it up. Clause 17b, buried in their mortgage terms like a landmine in fine print, said this. Should the neighboring parcel at 612 Larchwood Avenue be sold to a non-relative, a legal variance must be obtained for the driveway encroachment, or the borrower assumes financial responsibility for renegotiation with the bank. Guess who just became the non-relative owner of 612 Larchwood? Yours truly. I called the city office. I didn't complain. Not exactly. I just asked what I'd need to do to build a fence on the property line. They asked which property. I gave them mine. Then I gave them the survey file. And then I sat back with a cup of coffee and watched the wheels of municipal justice start turning with delicious, bureaucratic slowness. 2 weeks later, my parents got a letter from their lender. Not a friendly one. The kind of letter that uses bold font and says things like, corrective action required, and potential lien risk. I only know that because I saw Mom pacing in their front yard, waving a stack of papers like she was trying to swat karma away. I kept sipping my coffee from a mug that said, too old for presents. Oh, the irony. They still didn't know I was the one who bought the house next door. To them, it was just some guy with a scruffy beard and a work truck, fixing up an old place. Probably renting. They assumed. One evening, Dad muttered something across the hedge while taking out the trash. You know who bought that dump next door? He asked. I stood perfectly still on my porch, holding a power drill. Nah, Mason said from their driveway. Probably some weirdo. Looks broke. I smiled. Kept drilling. Let them think I was broke. Let them squirm about their mortgage. I wasn't ready to reveal anything yet. But I was getting close. Because while they scrambled to understand what was happening, I was finalizing something much more permanent. A change of zoning. A fence permit. And a scheduled delivery. Not a package. Not yet. That would come later, wrapped and delivered with all the seasonal cheer they once denied me. The fence was the final straw. Not metaphorically, I mean literally. A 6-foot cedar plank fence, pressure-treated, clean-lined, and installed with the kind of precision that screamed, this wasn't cheap, Susan. I didn't rush it. I waited until the permit cleared, until the weather warmed up, until the grass got just high enough on their side of the yard to annoy Dad's HOE sensibilities. Then I called in my crew. It took 2 days. On the first day, Mom came outside and tried to make polite small talk with my team. What's all this for? She asked, squinting toward me like I was the assistant, not the owner. Boundary restoration, I said simply. Turns out this house had a few lines crossed. She smiled tightly and nodded. I could practically hear her brain saying, ugh, contractors. Dad came out 20 minutes later holding the letter from the bank like it was radioactive. We have an agreement with the previous owner. He barked across the yard. Yep, I replied, using my staple gun to secure the privacy slats. You did. And I didn't say anything else. Because by then, they'd started to suspect. Not confirm, just suspect. You could see it in the way Dad squinted at me longer than usual, or how Mom kept whispering to Mason in the driveway. Then came the flyer. It was a trifold, professionally printed. Had my business logo on the front, a cool little flame and snowflake combo, and read, Local HVAC business expands. New service center now open on Larchwood Ave. Inside were photos of the house. Renovated. Painted. Branded. Out front? Me. Smiling. Standing proudly next to Bessie. And at the bottom? Owner, Elliot Brooks. I mailed one to every house in the neighborhood. I didn't send one to my parents. I sent 3. Different designs. Same message. Mason was the first to crack. I know this because one night around 11:45 p.m., I got a string of texts from an unknown number. Unknown number. Yo, what is wrong with you? Did you seriously buy that place? Why are you acting like a stalker? Dad is freaking out. This is childish. I replied with a single image. A photo of the Christmas tree from last year. Specifically, a close-up of the gift pile. All names visible. None of them mine. Then I blocked the number. A few days later, my phone rang again. This time, it was from a local number I didn't recognize, but my gut said answer it. Elliot Brooks? The voice said. Speaking. This is Clara from Landmark Bank. You're listed as the current property owner of 612 Larchwood, correct? That's right. I'm reaching out in regard to the shared property line variance with 610 Larchwood. The owners have requested an easement renegotiation and informed us you might be open to mediation. I smiled so hard I nearly dropped my coffee mug. Oh no, I said. No mediation necessary. I'm installing a shed next month. Need that land clear. But they're free to build a new driveway, on their side. Silence. Then Clara sighed. That may trigger a default clause on their mortgage. I'm aware. She cleared her throat. Well, in that case, I'll inform them of the update. I thanked her and hung up. 5 minutes later, Mason drove past my house at like 50 miles per hour, windows down, music blasting. It was dramatic. I think he was hoping I'd come out, confront him, scream or cry or at least throw something. But I didn't. I just sat in my new office, the one I drywalled myself, surrounded by invoices, tools, and the smell of fresh paint. Because while they were spiraling, I was building. And while they were panicking about a foreclosure letter that hadn't even arrived yet, I was writing it. Literally. Through the lawyer I'd hired the same week I bought the place, just in case things got interesting. Spoiler, they did. The foreclosure letter was mailed certified. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to make sure Dad signed for it himself. I paid extra for signature tracking and even got the little green card back in the mail with his sharp, angry handwriting etched across it like he was trying to stab the pen through the paper. 3 days later, all hell broke loose. It started with a knock. Not a polite one. Not a tap 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 from someone uncertain. This was a police knock, the kind you use when you want to rattle bones. I opened the door with the calm of a monk in a scented candle store. There stood Dad. In loafers and a windbreaker. Like he marched straight out of a 1990s sitcom and into my now upgraded, fully permitted office/home. You think this is funny? He growled. I raised an eyebrow. What, the timing? A little bit. You're destroying our lives over some childhood tantrum? Ah. There it was. The word tantrum. The Brooks family's favorite label for any reaction they didn't approve of. I stepped out onto the porch and leaned against the railing I'd sanded by hand. You mean the childhood where you forgot I existed every holiday? He scoffed. We didn't forget you. You're exaggerating. You literally told me I was too old for presents. That was a joke. I crossed my arms. Weird. I didn't see anyone laughing. He pointed a finger at me. You can't actually go through with this. You're bluffing. Mason says you're just trying to get attention. Mason thinks cryptocurrency is a personality. I wouldn't put too much stock in his opinions. His nostrils flared. You think you're better than us now? No, I said slowly. I think I finally see you. That's the difference. He opened his mouth, closed it again. Then stormed off down the steps. Didn't say goodbye. Didn't ask what I wanted. Didn't offer a truce. He just left, with rage in his shoulders and confusion in his spine. Later that night, it was Mom's turn. She didn't knock. Just waited outside like a guilt ghost until I opened the door. Her makeup was perfect, as always. Lipstick too pink. Eyes tired but polished. I brought cookies, she said, holding a plastic container with shaky hands. Wow. A gift. What changed? She flinched. Can we talk? I let her in. She didn't sit. Just hovered near the entrance like she wasn't sure if this counted as enemy territory. You're really doing this? Doing what? Taking our house? I'm not taking anything. I'm just letting the bank follow the rules you signed up for. She looked at the floor. It's just a house. Funny. You never acted like it was just a house when it meant throwing Christmas dinners big enough for Instagram. She sighed. We didn't mean to hurt you. But you did. Silence. Then, your father's pride is hurt. He won't ask for help. I raised an eyebrow. And what about yours? She didn't answer that. Instead, she reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. Can we buy some time? We just need a few weeks. I took it. Opened it. Inside was a check. Made out to me. For $2,000. I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was so perfectly them. As if $2,000 could undo decades. As if money was the fix for everything. I handed it back. No thanks. Elliot, please. You already had my silence for free, I said. I'm not giving you peace of mind for a discount. She didn't cry. She just looked hollow. I hope this makes you feel better, she whispered. It doesn't, I said honestly. But it makes me feel seen. She left the cookies on the table and walked out. And I stood in the middle of my kitchen, which used to be someone else's kitchen, and realized something wild. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't even bitter. I was just done. I didn't want an apology. I didn't need tears. All I wanted now was for the final envelope to land, and for it to be wrapped exactly like a Christmas gift. December 23rd, nearly a full year since that Christmas. The one where my name didn't appear once on a tag, a card, or even a "Hope you're doing well." This time, I had something for them. I'd been planning it for months. Not out of spite, okay, not just out of spite, but because closure deserved wrapping paper. And poetic justice deserved ribbons. I called a courier service. Not some shady gig app, but a real one. White gloves. Branded truck. Real bow tie on the guy's neck, not clip-on. I gave them the delivery instructions with surgical precision. Drop-off time, 9 a.m. sharp, December 24th. Location, 610 Larchwood Avenue. Recipient, the Brooks family. Contents, 1 box, 12 by 9, wrapped in red and gold foil paper. Heavy-duty cardboard inside. Label. For the family member who's too old for presents. Inside was a single document, printed on thick, ivory legal-grade paper. Stamped. Notarized. Notice of property seizure intent. Signed by the bank's attorney. Final warning. One last deadline. And at the bottom? Filed by adjacent property owner, Elliot Brooks. It wasn't revenge. It was reality, wrapped in a bow. I didn't see their faces when they opened it, but I didn't need to. I saw what happened next. At 9:21 a.m., Mason posted a vague story on Instagram. A blurry pic of a fireplace and the words, "Some people never grow up." Sad? At 9:32 a.m., I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. Unknown, what do you want from us? I didn't answer. At 10:05 a.m., Mom called. Left a voicemail. Elliot, please, can we talk? You've made your point. And finally, at 11:42 a.m., Dad himself came to my front door. No knock. Just stood there. Frozen. I let him stand. It was cold, but not as cold as his voice last Christmas. Eventually, he knocked, soft this time. I opened the door. He looked smaller. Not physically, emotionally. Like someone deflated him slightly. I'm not here to argue, he said. I said nothing. I just wanted to say, we never thought you'd do it. I never thought I'd have to. He nodded. Mason's trying to get a bridge loan. I doubt it'll work. That's not my problem. No, he said quietly. It's not. We stood there in silence, two men who once shared a roof but never truly shared a moment. I guess we just assumed, he started, that I'd always take it. I finished. Another nod. Slower this time. He looked past me into the house. Saw the polished floors. The framed company license. My mug on the counter that read Basement Kid to Boss Man. I hope you're proud of what you built, he said. I am. He nodded again. Then turned and walked away. Christmas Day, I got a text from Tricia, my cousin, the only one who ever treated me like a human instead of a handyman. Tricia, just saw the Zillow listing. They're selling the house? I replied. Me, not by choice. Tricia, you okay? Me, better than ever. Because I was. No more invisible chairs at the holiday table. No more smiles forced through gritted teeth. No more hoping they'd see me. I'd already built something too big to ignore. And that foreclosure letter? It wasn't a threat. It was my goodbye. Wrapped in gold foil. Just like they taught me. On New Year's Day, I got a card in the mail. No return address. Just my name. The handwriting familiar. Inside was a Christmas photo. All of them. Standing awkwardly in front of the fireplace. Smiles strained. No gifts in sight. A Happy Holidays banner taped unevenly above the mantel. On the back, scrawled in Dad's handwriting. You got what you wanted. Hope you're happy. I didn't respond. I just walked to my front room, where the cookies Mom brought still sat unopened, and took out the card I'd written months ago but never sent. It said, "This wasn't about happiness. It was about remembering what it feels like to matter. Merry Christmas. Elliot." Then I taped it to the cookies. Left them on their porch. No doorbell. No knock. Just a package. Wrapped in silence. Delivered with peace. And sealed with the words they never thought would come back to haunt them. Too old for presents.